So now I want to talk about some anomalous traffic patterns, or IOCs. This is not going to be an exhaustive list of those. It's going to be kind of a sample of some of the things which have happened in the past and what you should look out for, just kind of indicators for all of that. So an indicator of compromise is some forensic artifact observed in network traffic, logs, endpoints, wherever, which indicates with a high degree of confidence that the system may have been compromised or attacked. And so IOCs enable defenders to detect, triage, respond to incidents efficiently. So network IOCs, those could be malicious IP addresses or domains, and there's a lot of open source lists out there of malicious addresses, malicious domains, things to add into a block list to prevent before it gets into your network. Unusual outbound port usage. So one of those things that you'll see is systems will have some pretty standard and consistent outbound usage, but every so often there may be a system which has an excessively high amount of outbound ports, or may be trying to connect multiple times to different addresses, or beaconing patterns to external IP addresses. Anything like that would warrant additional investigation and looking into it to see, is it actually compromised? DNS requests to generated domains. That's one thing. There's domains that can be dynamically generated, which could be a big red flag. Large data transfers to unexpected destinations. So there could be a system which doesn't normally transfer a lot of data, and all of a sudden one day it starts transferring gigabytes worth of data. Well, that's a big red flag. And the malicious actors, they are a lot of them are good enough to take steps to mask their transfers, and some of it by slowing it down, some of it by spreading it across multiple hosts. But sometimes they can't or don't take those steps, and it leads to red flags on the host. You can look at file hashes and compare that against known malicious files or malicious data, suspicious registry auto run keys, or even suspicious registry keys, unusual processes or chains, LNK files, the link files pointing to weird locations could be a indicator. Prefetch entries, and we talked about prefetch last week, but prefetch entries for unusual executables, or things which you wouldn't normally see. There's also behavioral IOCs, so accounts logging in outside of normal business hours or from different locations, or a key one is someone logged in from a IP address in the same location as a business, and then 10 minutes later logged in from an address outside of the country. Well, either they're using a VPN or their account has been compromised, and so in either case it would warrant an additional investigation. Failed login storm followed by success, so lots of invalid passwords, and all of a sudden there's a valid password attempt. Lateral movement between internal hosts, and this is a big thing that has affected a lot of companies. Target, Home Depot, Kohl's, they all had this issue where a HVAC vendor was compromised. And at least in the case of Target, the HVAC vendor was compromised. They got into Target's network, and then they made lateral movements across the network to get to other hosts, and eventually they got to the self-checkout point of sale machines. And so that lateral movement is a big thing, because once someone is inside of the network, well, the protections on the network are typically to prevent people from getting into the network, and not necessarily the same level of protection to prevent someone already inside of the network to not be able to laterally move across it. There's also privilege escalation events. So that's event 4688 in Windows. Linux will have similar things, but privilege escalation is a big area of concern. There's also data staging before exfiltration. So those are all behavioral IOCs. Command and control beaconing it can be easy to detect this in some cases. It can be really hard to detect in other cases, but you might look for systems which check in at fixed intervals or a fairly regular basis. And Wireshark will allow you to reveal those spikes and will help you analyze it quite a bit more. Fixed payload sizes, so heartbeat packages or heartbeat packets, not necessarily command and control, but heartbeat in general, is going to be a fixed size typically because it's just letting the other side know, hey, I'm still here, I'm just waiting for more information, or it's sending something to the other side saying, do you have anything new for me? And so it will be a constant heartbeat. And so if you look for packets which are about the same size, that could be an indicator of compromise. The domain generation algorithm, so the random letters and numbers for a domain could be a big indication. There can also be in the DNS logs, there could be a lot of NX domain, which is no such domain responses, followed by successful. Could be an indication that there's some software in there which has a list of 50, 60 domains, and it's just going down that list until it finds one that gets a response from. So that's another key indicator. Also, long duration connection. So once it gets connected to the CNC server, then it could keep that conversation open for a while where it's constantly sending back and forth a little bit of information as it's just getting updates from the command and control server. So DNS tunneling, long subdomains. So if you look through that, you'll notice that maybe there's some subdomains, which typically are short, might be really long. Now, again, there is a legitimate use to have long subdomains. I know that GitLab, those subdomains are long because it has to generate a hash for some of the information for the GitLab pages. So it's not a known indication, but it is a indicator that something may have happened. High frequency or high query frequency. DNS is a bit chatty at times, but too much DNS talking is suspicious. Queries to one domain could also be suspicious. Large text records. Again, that there are legitimate uses for this, but large text records could be an indicator. Like I'd mentioned before, that NX domain storm, where there's a lot of non-existent domains and all of a sudden one valid domain, could be an indicator that there is a program that is trying to find its command and control server to talk to. Indicators of lateral movement, so SMB connections. Again, in an Active Directory environment, typically computers will talk to servers over SMB, specifically domain controllers and file servers and things of that nature, but they won't talk to other workstations over SMB. So if you're seeing SMB traffic between workstations, well, that's concerning. Same with RDP. Usually RDP should be highly controlled and not enabled, but that is a vector of some compromise. WinRM, which is Windows Remote Management, also known as PowerShell remoting, is a way that you can remotely run and manage various systems, and that uses ports 5985 and 5986, I believe. There's also PSExec, which is PowerShell executable or PowerShell execution, and connections to specific shares. So there's, on every computer, there's an admin $sign and an IPC $sign, which shouldn't be usable, but that is, if you see somebody using those or trying to use those, that's an indicator of potential compromise. And then finally, Kerberos and LDAP. So LDAP stands for Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, and Active Directory uses LDAP, and there's a lot of other LDAP type systems out there. But LDAP queries or Kerberos ticket requests, things of that nature, could be an indication that someone is trying to elevate their access to find other user accounts or find other systems that they can try logging into. So all of this, you will see this in Wireshark if you have an entire packet capture on a network. You may also see this on your intrusion prevention or intrusion detection systems. You will see this inside of Windows hosts and other hosts, which are logging all sorts of information. And a lot of times those logs, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but those logs should be sent off to a central logging repository, which is where you would end up analyzing a lot of the traffic and the indicators. So data exfiltration patterns. So volume anomaly. So if a workstation normally sends a few megabytes per hour and suddenly it transfers hundreds or hundreds of megabytes or even gigabytes of data to an external IP address, well, that's strange. There could be a legitimate business reason for it, but it could also be something to look into. Legitimate HTTPS traffic goes through a CDN-backed or well-known infrastructure. HTTPS connections to raw IP addresses, so not going to a DNS name, but going directly to an IP address could be a problem, especially if there isn't that DNS lookup. Cloud storage, with the spread of cloud storage these days and cloud services, it's becoming harder and harder to know what is abnormal, but there's a lot of indicators, especially if you have a long history of data that you can look upon as to what is normal cloud storage use and abnormal cloud storage use. Steganography. This is a fun little thing. It's hiding information inside of other information. Commonly, steganography is hiding data inside of images or videos, but it could be hiding information in data packets, ICMP. So ICMP is something which is normally just passed through a router, but you can specify and you can craft your own ICMP packets. Commonly, they're pretty small at 32 bytes. I think Linux is, it's either 32 or 64 bytes. Windows is 32 bytes. But if you see ICMP packets, which are quite a bit larger, well, that could be indication that somebody's trying to do something not quite on the up and up. FTP to external IPs. I mean, really, FTP is a great protocol, but it should be used sparingly just because it's not secured. There's SFTP, not FTPS, but SFTP, which is a secured version of FTP. But if you see traffic which is not normally using FTP or SFTP suddenly start using that, well, that can be a indicator. So there is there's a number of frameworks out there and threat intels. There's the MITRE ATT&CK, which is the definitive framework for adversary attacks, techniques, procedures, and it will map network artifacts, host artifacts, and detection methods. So it's a site that you should definitely look at. There is the structured threat information expression, which is a standard format for sharing IOCs, which has all the information which is needed for that. There's VirusTotal. VirusTotal is a great website to start poking around at. You can submit file hashes, IP addresses, domains. It automatically runs those hashes or those even actual files. You can submit actual files to it, and it will run it against several antivirus engines, threat intelligence databases. It'll provide quite a bit of information on what the kind of the reputation of that and whether or not there's anything that it's previously seen. There's threat intelligence feeds, so Alien Vault OTX, emerging threats from Proofpoint, abuse.ch. They all publish various feeds. which have malicious IPs, domains, hashes, and you can take those and import them into various tools. So emerging threats, there's a community version and there's a pro version that you have to pay for. But you can take those, import it into programs like Suricata, and use that to analyze traffic and look at it through that way, or even firewall block lists. So utilizing those feeds and keeping up to date with all of that is very important. So IOC hunting workflow in Wireshark is you want to check for beaconing, so you look at the IO graph, look for periodic spikes at fixed intervals. You can investigate those suspicious spikes and see what's actually happening. You can look for DNS queries. You can look for those subdomains, the DGA patterns, high query counts. Then you can look for unusual connections through the statistics and conversations. You can sort by bytes. You can sort by number of packets. You can identify all of those and start to look at them a little bit more. You can look at the user agents and see like what malware might use a different user agent, or try to mask it through there. You can look for specific ports. So 4444 was the Metasploit port. TCP 8080 and 8443 are higher number ports, which aren't used normally for web traffic, but could be used. It might be used by command and control servers. And so looking for specific patterns there, and even under statistics, you can look for the counts of what ports are being used and kind of analyze it that way. So really all of these indicators of compromise is very much kind of like a puzzle. You have a potential indicator, and now you have to find all the pieces, put it back together, and show the entire picture for what it is. So those forensic artifacts can exist everywhere. Beaconing patterns, it's anytime that a system is constantly trying to talk to a command and control server, there will be some pattern that will need to be, or that will show up in the logs. Lateral movement is a huge concern, and it's something that can be revealed through SMB queries or RDP or WinRM or Kerberos and that sort of stuff. And then finally, you want to keep up with the various threat intels, and you want to utilize kind of the global internet community for tracking and analyzing whether or not a host is malicious, or maybe a sample check to see if it has been seen somewhere else. So look at all that and just constantly keep an eye out there.